I've been thinking a lot about the old jigging wrap lately, and I have some rather new thoughts and ideas on things, as you're always trying to, learn throughout life, fine-tune some things, improve some things, and some of it might contradict a little bit of what I said in that last big jigging wrap video that I did like 3 years ago. But again, I've changed, I've grown, I've learned, and we're going to talk about some of those things today and hopefully catch some fish in a very short window. Let's take a brief moment to discuss the weather of this year, 2024. It's been absolutely wild. Storms constantly, wind constantly, cold weather, all that stuff. You saw some of that complaining of mine in my last video, perhaps. And last night I was woken up twice by storms. And then when I woke up this morning, it started storming again about a half hour later, like 6:30. And it's just relentless. And we're supposed to have more storms here in 3 or 4 hours. But at least we're going to talk about jigging wraps. I got about 5 or 6 things that I want to get into. And we're going to do that in the middle of hopefully catching a few fish. And while I presume most of you are here for educational purposes or watching someone catch fish, for those that are interested in more personal things about me and my life, there's been a reason I haven't made a ton of videos lately. One, guiding's been busy. That's been awesome. I've had 3 days off in the last 2 weeks that I actually specifically marked off to make videos. And one of them showed or provided 40-mile-an-hour winds. And then the other 2 I spent fixing bearings on my trailer with the help of my big buddy, Kent Yancey. So there haven't been a lot of opportunities for me to get out and make a video. That's life. Sometimes life gets in the way, right? But I'm excited to be back out here trying it again today. And in that vein, back to the jigging wrap discussion. One of the big things that I've changed a lot, my philosophy is, I was very much tied to that medium fast rod for 2 reasons. One, it seemed like the little stiffer rod would get that bait to jump and move more through the water. But also, with the medium light fasts, I had a lot of issues where you'd snap it and that line would wrap around the tip of the rod. That said, if you can control that, and casting downwind is one big thing that helps you control that, a medium light rod actually, it's a lot easier to work for 2 reasons. One, it's obviously lighter, so it's, less taxing on your shoulders and your wrists throughout the day, but also that extra bend in the rod really snaps that lure by itself, and it just gives it a totally different action. So there's some days, especially like this earlier season jigging wrap stuff, like late spring, early summer, where you don't necessarily need, the big crack. You can just give it these little pops and fling that thing up and almost work it more like, a jig in a plastic, as opposed to the big whip crack jigging wrap stuff. And I've had some days in the last couple of years where we're out jigging wrap, somebody wants a jig wrap, we all got medium fast rods on, and all of a sudden I realize, oh, I only have so many of these rods, but I got some medium light. So I take out a medium light, I'll use the medium light. I don't want somebody to get tangled up in the line and all that stuff. I'll deal with that. And then all of a sudden I start catching fish and they're not. And then I give them the medium light rod. There's something different about the action that sometimes fish tend to like. Another thing with jigging wraps that was kind of a big sticking point with me is that I never had a lot of luck with the number 7s. I always had better luck with the number 9s. And then for a couple of years, I just never used the 7s. It's nice to use the 7s because they're lighter and they're easy to work. But I kind of gave up on the number 7s. But then all of a sudden we had a good jigging wrap season earlier in the year than, like, it used to just be kind of a fall thing for me. And then all of a sudden we started dabbling with them not only in like midsummer, but like early summer, and had a lot of luck with the number 7s, predominantly in shallow water. I think when you're in shallower water, 10, 15 foot and less, those 7s are really good. They're not quite so quick in the shallows. But also lately, I've been using them in like 25 feet of water and having a lot of luck with the number 7s deep. Whether it's, you know, the shallow water thing, whether it's fish wanting a little smaller bait, I no longer completely shy away from the 7s. I will use the 7s and give them a shot now and again. One of the other kind of early things too was like the idea that you always wanted it to fall on a slack line, right? Which, yeah, falling on a slack line maximizes the action of the lure for sure. But then I'd also seen people talk about doing a controlled fall. Like there was an Uncut Angling video several years ago where he was catching some big walleyes up in Canada, and he was doing a vertical and he was pulling it and then following the line all the way down. Now the difference being, if it's a perfectly controlled fall, like the lure's just gonna like lower down. But if you're just kind of like, walking down with it, I think we had a nip. If you're following it down just a little bit, you maintain contact with the lure. Oh, there was another bite. They're being funny. You maintain contact with the lure so that you can feel the bite on the way down. Now, a lot of times if you're letting it fall on the slack line, jigging wrap fishing is all about like, you rip up and oh my gosh, there's a fish on, right? Sometimes if they're a little more tentative, they might like that controlled fall. And then if you feel the bite, you can hit them before they potentially spit it. So again, I think there's a time and place for everything. Like I'm learning there are a lot of different strategies one can use. And if something's not working, it's good to try the other, obviously. And I've learned a lot from other people that I've had in my boat. I've had some ice fisher people over the years that they basically fish the thing like they would if they were ice fishing. And I've seen it work, especially like the fall time. If they're not quite like just cranking things yet, you might have luck vertically just shaking it on the spot like you would an ice lure. I've seen that work plenty of times and I learned a few things there. And also a few years ago, I was out with my dad and my brother in the fall and he was pitching into really shallow water. There were some rocks there and he was just kind of like lifting it up over these rocks more so than anything just to feel what's down there and not get a snag. But he started getting bites doing it too. Jigging wraps aren't always full throttle, crank it type baits. There's a lot of different options. Swung around back on those fish that I had the nips from. You can see them on the graph. They're sitting in 24 feet of water. I switched to a number 7 and I'm slowly trolling forward through them at the moment. And then if they don't take doing that, I'm going to try to sit spot locked and pitch at them. Maybe they don't like so much movement. And I'm going to just vary my cadence and see if I can't coax a bite. You can see we totally lost our wind now after that couple of storms moved through, and I'm guessing these fish are a little less than active. This is probably a terrible day to try to do a jigging wrap video. This flat, calm stuff after a storm just doesn't sound right. And now it's July. We have 63-degree water. Just can't get the lake to warm up. And the days that we get some good sun and the temps start going up a little bit, we start catching fish a lot better. Then you get another storm and the wind blows things around and the water gets cold and it turns into a little bit of a grind again. But we got one to go. Look at that. Feels like a decent fish too. I like this fish. Ooh, he's gonna go over the other side. Holy cow. Well, it's not a little snagged one because he's taking me. That was the number 7. It was the perch color that I had a nip on the number 9. And then I switched to a purple number 7. Wasn't getting bit, so I was like, well, let's go back to the perch color, number 7, and see what happens. Oh mama. Oh mama. It feels like a big walleye. It's not making massive pike runs, and it's not a little snagged fish that would pull hard and then float up to the surface. It is a walleye. Let's just stop talking because it's a walleye. He did get hooked a little funny, but it's a nice walleye. Off in the net. I'm happy with that. These flat, calm conditions. Post-storm. Getting a bite in the jigging wrap. And what it took was downsizing to a number 7 to get him to finally take. That's pretty. Nice 20-inch walleye. 24 feet of water on the jigging wrap. Tighten my drag back up a little bit. If I'm doing a medium light, I don't worry about it as much, but it's a medium fast and it's fairly stiff. I like to have my drag fairly tight to set the hook. And then I like to loosen it to fight the fish. You want a lot of cushion with jigging wraps because they can shake hooks so easily with these things. There's a fish under the boat. I'm gonna go vertical. Now we can try a little vertical techniques. This isn't so much things I've changed my mind on, but more like varieties that I've added. So you got like your standard, right? Kind of lift and drop. And you can let it fall on the slack line and make it do its thing. Or you could do a little more controlled fall and it would have less action, or maybe just like lower down. Or you could do the pop and catch, where you catch it off the bottom and you don't let it hit the bottom. I've seen that work. And then you got your ice fishing. Doink, doink, doink. Oh, he's still on the graph. We kept the fish around. Sometimes a slow, tall pull works. Sometimes you get the double pops, little twitches, ice fishing. Trying all the things to get this fish to go. And one other little trick I can throw in there, especially if you're struggling with like, you know, your arm getting tired. If you got a tight line and you pull it like that, that takes a lot of effort. If you got a tight line and you use your wrist to pop it, it takes less effort. If you get a little slack and hit the slack with your wrist, that makes it really easy to put a hard move on that bait without a lot of resistance. So I like to hit on a slack line a lot if I'm doing it all day long and they're taking it with a big snap. And I think it gets a little more acceleration to jump the bait. I don't think that's what they want today, but another tool for the toolbox, if you will. Sometimes I let it sit on the bottom, more between. I think that actually might be a good idea today. And sometimes it'll sit there for 3 seconds. You just feel because they went down and rattled it, sucked it up. And sometimes to get their attention, I might do one of those. If I know there's a fish close, and then hopefully they saw it, and now I'll slow it down. Because my lure was like 20 feet away from the boat, and the fish was right there. What's up, pelican? Hard landing. Oh, wow. Giant mark. Under the boat. Whew. Oh! We might have just bumped his belly or something, but I had thrown out my number 7. I just quick grabbed the number 9 because I saw that on the screen. We definitely hit the fish. I don't know if it was in the mouth or somewhere else. Another thing we can talk about is leader line. It's like in my other videos, I think I pretty much said I use 14-pound fluorocarbon. That's still the case. But there's a couple different reasons for that. Partly, if you're using that fluoro and that heavier line, yeah, you're less likely to break, you're less likely to get abrasions from rocks, lose big fish, all that stuff. But the other thing it does is the heavier line is stiffer. And when you're snapping these things around, if you got really limp line, that's when you tend to get that sort of, you know, fouled up on the hook thing where the line wraps around, the hook gets in here, and you get all this kind of mess. That tends to happen a lot more if you have a really limp 8-pound fluoro kind of thing. I use a lot of 8-pound fluoro when I'm doing jigs and minnow stuff. And then when I'm doing jigging wraps, I use the 14. And the line's just stiffer, so it's less likely to wrap around. And then I use a snap. I don't use a swivel because I use braid, not mono. So I don't need the swivel to avoid line memory in the mono, which can be a big problem with mono filament. With that being said, that's another thing where like I'm 100% sold on braid for the most part. But I also know that kind of like the medium light rod versus the medium fast rod, if you're using monofilament, it's going to have a different action. You're going to do a lot more rip to get a lot less movement on the bait. And sometimes that's what it takes to get fish. So it wouldn't hurt to have 2 different rods set up. It wouldn't hurt to have another rod set up with different line. There's so many different things you can do to change the action of the lure to make it work on a certain day. I've seen guys catch fish or not catch fish with mono versus braid. I've seen guys catch fish or not catch fish with that medium light versus the medium. That is a lot to have different rods spooled up with different line, I realize, but it can pay off. Always when I'm eating, isn't it? Always the case. Just kind of cruising the shelf, looking for marks on the graph. Saw a few, threw back, and I got one to bite. And it feels like a decent fish. Look at that guy. He bit it. Hungry fish. Can we lift him in? I think so. Jigging Wrap. I eat, the fish eat. What's new? This might be the fewest fish catches of any video ever, but when you only have so many opportunities to make a video, you make a video. Hopefully it's helpful and educational, maybe entertaining. Hooked up with another Walleye star number 3, I think. I don't know what else it would be. Get a little sun popping, get just a little ripple on the water, and maybe they're ready to feed again for the afternoon. How big are you? Oh. You are 17 inches long. Hooked right under the chin. Can I get you in? Sure. Let's do it. That would be a legal catch in front of the gill plate. The old chin pinner happens a lot. They get that thing jumping around down there and they're like, hey, don't go anywhere. I want to see what you are. They pin it and then you rip and then line screams out. Got some players under the boat. The ones I casted at didn't take. I'll pull it through the ones underneath. Hooked up again. I think they're starting to wake up. This might be a decent fish. Let's make sure we play this right and find out. Come on. Show yourself to the camera. Let's go. Drag looser. Give you some room to run. Come on. Come on up here. Oh, it's not small. It's not a small fish. Not huge either, but it's nice. Wow. Numero a quattro. There we go. You are a slippery devil, aren't you? That's just a fat fish. Holy cow. battle scars. That fish was so fat. He made me think he was, oh my gosh, that's gushing. He made me think he was 24 inches. Probably only 18, but should get a Band-Aid so this doesn't bleed everywhere. I wasn't working it too aggressively either. I was just kind of pulling it on the turn, you know. I was doing this when the boat was moving and whammo. That's not going to stop. How about we get a Band-Aid and then proceed back in the game, coach. Tighten the drag back up. There we go. I like it so if you give it a good hard pull, you get just a little bit of squeal on the drag. Got him. Got him. Pending walleye number 5. Come here, buddy. Doesn't feel giant, but it feels like another nice fish. He's a little chin pinned. A little chin pinned. Not bad. Chubby little 15.5-er. Barely hooked. Oh, geez, he did a double pop on the way in. I nosedived him and then he flipped right away. That was kind of funny. I'm having better luck today with the slow troll though. That one was just right behind the boat. I had just enough line out that I could get down to bottom between rips, and that worked. I've done that like 3 times, I think, out of 5 fish. Really slow though, like 0.4, 0.5. If I were doing this 2 years ago today on this spot, these spots, these fish, I don't know if I would have caught all 5 of these. I've done a lot of things different. I've varied a lot of things. I've mostly used a medium light rod today. Every fish has been a little different, whether it was trolling versus sitting still, the number 7 versus the number 9, different color, slightly different cadence and timing. They haven't all been on the same page, but we figured out a way to catch 5 of them on Jigging Wrap specifically. That'll top it off. I think I'm going to release that one. Oh, right away. Are you any bigger? Not a lot. Later, fisher people.